to another edition of Inside Southeastern Sports. I'm Jay Lindly, talking with head coach Tyler Fenwick. And as we talked a week ago, Coach, we'd start kind of progressing through the groups. And this week, going to talk running backs, linebackers. And when we look at the running back core that's back from a year ago, Ron Taylor's a guy that stands out. He didn't necessarily have a lot of carries a year ago, still nearly 500 yards rushing, nearly 7 yards a carry. And behind a retooled offensive line, it's got to be something you guys are looking forward to.
Yeah, Ryan Taylor, I don't think he played. I don't think he carried the ball the first 3 games last year. And, we had guys like Rashad and CJ and all that stuff, and those guys were getting most of the reps, and there's only so many carries and the rotation, all that stuff. And Ryan he's not flashy. He doesn't say a whole lot. He's just, all you can say is consistent. He's just constant. And so, we had some injuries, and all of a sudden Ryan Taylor gets in there, game 4, and, all of a sudden he's popping these runs, and you're going, where did that all come from? And us as a new staff last year, we were trying to figure out who we had and who's, what the depth chart's looking like, and how do these guys react in games and all that stuff. And Ryan Taylor in the weight room is unbelievable. He's one of our strongest kids in the program. Just from an accountability, reliability standpoint, he's just, you ask him to do something and he's going to do it, and he's going to, and really he's probably going to win, when he's put in a competitive situation. So you count on him, just watching him throughout the course of the season just get better, and all of a sudden he pops these 60-yard runs and scoring touchdowns and all that, and you're going, wow, this is great, and then to have him back coming up and really get a chance to now mentor and guide these young running backs that we've got, I think is going to be really good for the future of our program.
Before we talk about some of the guys recruiting, one thing that your offense really predicates on what the defense is allowing, and we haven't seen this necessarily a lot in recent years. What's your philosophy on having guys in the backfield that can catch it out of the backfield?
Yeah, no, obviously, you want to be able to get your backs out in the backfield and stretch the defense and throw it to them. And if you can get 5 guys that are out there with the 4 receivers or tight end and the running back and all being involved somehow, then, and also throwing them screens.
And how much does that tie back to what we were talking about last week with offensive line? Last year, so many times on pass plays, you kind of had to keep those guys back there as protection.
Yeah, we did. We did with as inexperienced as that group was, it was, we felt like we needed to have a guy like Ryan Taylor, who's as strong as he is and as physical as he is, that can kind of shore up protection and just make sure that we're secure in the passing game. So I think, like you were saying, with having this revamped offensive line, I think we can do more with that position and get those guys out and either free releasing them or check releasing them and things like that.
Of course, you look at, who you brought in recruiting wise, and really, essentially your first real recruiting class, if you will. CJ Palmer's a guy that kind of stands out from Red Oak, nearly 1,700 yards rushing, almost 10 yards a carry. That's one of those stats that really jumps out at you. Right. And then Chris Kraft and Arlington Martin kid. Talk a little bit about those guys. Do you see those guys redshirting, or with the things playing out as they are these guys going to be true freshmen, which is something you don't typically see at the D2 level?
Yeah, well, I think that, those guys are going to be thrown into the mix right away. Ryan Taylor's the only guy that we've got returning that's in our program right now that's going through, all the lifting and the practices and all the skill instruction and all that stuff. And so we've got to kind of find out who's going to be there, competing with them. And so we, it was important to bring in those 2 guys that, they're very similar. They're both pretty thick, low to the ground, low center of gravity, but they've also got, speed where they can, get big plays. They should both be pretty good in protection, and they can both catch the football. So, I think, it'll be interesting to see how well they, how quickly they pick things up and understand the scheme and all that as we go through practices. But, and then, you're also looking at D. Johnson, who's also from Red Oak, who redshirted last year, who's almost the same body type, thick, great vision, understands the game, understands assignments and all that stuff. So I think, there's going to be a lot of competition for that depth chart spots, and who's going to be getting the carries and who's going to be rotating in. We made a move where we moved Kerrion Howard, who was a redshirt freshman receiver last year, big time punt returner coming out of high school. We moved him to running back. because just when you're a punt returner with that kind of vision, you kind of get that, you understand your blocks, you understand how to set things up, and he's just a different, he's almost different than the other guys just because he's a little bit more of a scat back, quick, make you miss kind of guy.
Whenever you look at, and getting to watch, what are some of the differences, I guess you could say, amongst those? And watching Palmer seemed to be maybe a little bit more elusive than Kraft, but Kraft, he almost glides, and they always say that about guys that can really run. They don't look like they're trying. They just kind of look more like an ice skater. And watching film on Kraft the other night, it seemed as though he just glided away from everyone chasing him.
Yeah, he doesn't look fast, and I think it's because he's 220 pounds. You just don't expect it, but you sit there and you watch the film over and over again, and I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be a guy that's going to be, if you're a safety, you don't know if you're going to get run over or if you're going to get juked and run by, and so that puts a defensive player in a tough position, how to make that tackle, how to approach that. So, but yeah, they're I think it's a really, really good backfield. I think the other guy that we hadn't mentioned is DeAndre Wheeler, who's a big 225-pound back. He's a little bit different. He's kind of a Jerome Bettis type guy that can do a lot of different things. Who's, the off season he's been just phenomenal as far as leadership and as far as just picking things up and a guy that you can count on. So I think that's a position I think that everybody's going to want to be watching to see how does that unfold.
You move over to the defensive side, linebacking core. A lot of returning pieces on that side of the ball. Obviously, begins with Connor Swope. Yep. Checking in on him, obviously last year injured midway into the year. How has he recovered?
Great. He's he's healthy. He's he's in the weight room. He's putting on weight. He's actually he's always kind of been kind of that, doesn't quite look like a linebacker, but he just makes every play on the field, and he's starting to fill out. He's actually starting to look like the typical college linebacker that you always see. So I think he'll be ready to go. He's in good shape. The shoulder's not bothering him. So he's what we want him to be.
Of course, you got a lot coming back. His brother Malik. Talk a little bit about those guys and where they stand. I mean, that was one area of the team last year. I say one area. It seemed like every week there were injuries at different positions at the most ill-opportune time. Linebacking core was one of those that you guys had to dig deep in the depth chart.
We did, and I think a year later now, we're happy about it because guys like Kamarion Pumphrey and Scooter Baker, those guys have gotten a lot more reps than probably what they were going to get when it's all said and done. Jared Bell went down. Jared Bell is probably in the best shape that I've ever seen him. His attitude is unbelievable. His leadership is unbelievable. He's just a completely new person right now. And so with Connor Swope and Jared Bell, Malik, Malik's probably in the best shape that he's ever been in. He's 235 pounds. He's 6'2", and he's running a 4.40. It's just freakish numbers that he's doing right now. So, now and then all of a sudden you got all these guys that we were kind of rotating in at outside linebacker last year with Donovan, with Donovan McKnight, and you had Hafford. Those guys were kind of in there in the mix and just kind of going back and forth and trying to figure out. Rucker was another one that was kind of in and out of the lineup, and it was just a hodgepodge of whoever's healthy this week and whoever's not making the mistakes this week is going to be playing, and we're going to rotate him in somehow. And I think now that all those guys, we moved Ryan Ronsis over to outside linebacker, so we had kind of tinkered with him at safety and tight end and trying to find the best place for him, and so we put him at outside linebacker. So we've really got a lot of good depth and a lot of unbelievable athletes. Just guys that can run, and they're just good size that fit our scheme.
And we talked about the injury, and one of the things that Zach fears in talking with him a year ago, one of what he considers, I guess, his biggest job, and you've alluded to the work these guys are putting in the weight room, but first and foremost, that being in shape is about more injury prevention than do you see that progress where you want it? Because obviously last year every nick and bruise that you could possibly have seemed to come to the forefront.
Yeah, I think so. You look at the weight that we're pushing now compared to last year, our kids are stronger. They look different. There's more of a foundation and more of a base. There's more of a flexibility. We worked a lot of flexibility and stretching and things like that, just to kind of have your core work, things like that. It's kind of a total package, and so but obviously we're going to find out. But I think we're training smarter, and I think that my theory is that now that we've been in a full year of Coach Fears' strength program, it's kind of all catching up, rather than when we got here it was like putting it all together real fast, and we got a season and we got to jump out there, and I think everything was maybe too much, and not to anybody's fault, but it was just what we had to do. And I think now that we've gone through a course of a full year and a half of a strength program, I think we're in a much better position than where we were in.
One more question on the defensive side of the ball before I let you go. You guys look at on the defensive side as a multiple front. Having as much depth, though, in the linebacking core, do you see opportunities perhaps moving forward with those guys to perhaps do some spot rushing type stuff out of 3-4 and that sort of pressure to perhaps even help out the DBs, create some turnovers?
Yeah, and that's really the whole philosophy behind the 3-4, is to be able to bring pressure from the outside and from the inside in different places, and really be able to move our guys around so that we can put them in the best positions for them to be successful in the best situations that occur during the games, against the personnel that we're going to see that week. You sit there and you look at a guy like Malik Hall, and you think about him coming off the edge with his speed and his physicality and quickness. I mean, that's just that's a
not a lot of left tackles going to be able to.
No, and then now you don't know if he's coming, and he's all of a sudden he's dropping into coverage, or he's doing whatever. So there's a lot of variety that we can bring, and I think now that we've got our system in place, we probably went through 6 weeks in a row where we didn't bring a blitz, because we just like we're saying, there's somebody new that's in there that doesn't understand or doesn't know how to do it, or doesn't hadn't repped it enough or whatever. And so we really had to play some pretty vanilla defense, and now we're able to kind of build on that and tweak things, knowing what our personnel looks like, and so it's exciting to be able to actually start maybe putting it into use.
Again, talking with Coach Tyler Fenwick. Next week we'll progress. We'll talk wide receivers, defensive backs, as we continue on through a non-season edition, if you will, of Inside Southeastern Sports. Thanks as always, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely. This is fun.
Till next time, I'm Jay Lindly. So long, everyone.